We're Hasani and Danielle Pettiford, and we're a real couple with real problems who almost called it quits.
I was very frustrated. I became very disconnected, very jaded and cold.
We have 4 children, going on 20 years of marriage, and we practice what we preach.
Our mission, to change the way couples relate to one another and teach them the skills needed to improve the quality of their relationships. This is the Couples Academy Show.
Welcome everyone to the Couples Academy Show. My name is Hasani, and I'm glad to be with you here this morning, wherever you may be tuning in from around the world. We just want to appreciate you for being a part of the community, because this is the show where we come together every day to talk about love, life, and relationships. And we really discuss relevant issues that people are really dealing with, giving steps and techniques and know-how to overcome your situation. So today we're talking about recognizing abuse in your relationship. And we're talking about this simply because when you think about the face of abuse, you typically think of a victim who has been beaten down and who's bloody and who's balled up in a corner and they're in tears and they're crying. And it doesn't always look like that. Sometimes you can engage in abusive behaviors and not even be aware of it, right? You wouldn't necessarily classify your relationship as an abusive relationship, but there is abuse in terms of how we treat each other in the relationship. And so we want to talk about that because oftentimes when abuse shows up in relationships, it creates a vulnerability, a disconnect, right? You go from soulmate to roommate to roommate to cellmate. The question becomes, how did we get here? We need to pay attention to the subtleties that take place. Not everything is obvious. Some things are, but not everything is. So we're going to unearth that today. But before we get started, guys, September the 9th through the 11th, you know what it is. It is the Unearthed Retreat. It is coming. It is coming. It is coming. There's a few more slots left, so it is not too late to get registered. Make sure you do so because you don't want to miss it. It comes around once a year. Watch this promo. We'll be right back. Doesn't that look great? That could be you. Listen, if you are a husband and you want to send your wife away so that she can get refreshed, so that she can, unearth some things, release some things so that she can become a better wife, a better mom, a better version of herself. Send her there. It's going to be an amazing time. And just so you know, the Foundry Retreat, it's coming up. We're going to be making announcements about that soon, so can't wait to see you all there. All right, guys, let's get into this conversation. We're talking about abusive behaviors. Now, there's a few different areas concerning abuse that we're going to tap into, but the first is probably where most people struggle the most. And as you know, communication is the biggest issue that people have. And so since that is the case, verbal abuse is what we want to talk about first. And verbal abuse rears its head in many different ways. So in chapter 2 of our book, The Audacity of Marriage, if you do not have that book, please go ahead and get it, because there's some great nuggets in there that will really help you to have a better relationship. But in that book, we have a chapter entitled Help, My Mouth is Killing My Marriage. And we talk about the verbal assassin. And the verbal assassin manifests his his or her venom in a number of different ways. And even if you would not call yourself that, these are some of the things that you need to be aware of. Like if you find yourself constantly criticizing your partner, it's just like you look through a lens of judgment. It's almost like you're always critiquing. You're always belittling them as a person. You're belittling what they do, their contribution to the relationship. You belittle how they look. You belittle their character. You belittle their abilities. By belittling them, you're shrinking them down, making them smaller. And really, instead of speaking life, you are speaking death to them into your situation. What happens is when you engage in that type of activity, what you're doing is you're forcing your spouse to build up a wall. You're closing their spirit. You're silencing their voice. You're making them, in your eyes, less than what they are. And so a lot of times people really within a relationship begin to develop insecurities, low self-esteem, low self-worth, because your words are like daggers that pierce inside of the heart of your spouse's, being. And what happens is it shuts them down. And so if you find yourself belittling, or if your spouse belittles you, it is worthy of a conversation because it's just no good. Another characteristic that many people engage in terms of verbal abuse is name calling. Like the need to always call somebody out of their name. Now, a lot of times the behaviors that we engage in our relationships oftentimes is predicated upon what we experience in our household. So maybe you name call because people called you out of your name, right? Maybe it was a mom or a dad or a sibling or a past partner. You came from abuse and you project on your partner what you've experienced in your own life. And I don't know, every time I get upset, I just call him such and such, or I just refer to her as such and such. And these become demeaning words. And so rather than calling them their name, or rather than expressing terms of endearment that edify, right, that build connection, you tear these connections apart by using words that demean, that degrade, that calls them out of the name. And even if you're not calling them stupid, what you did was stupid. Why are you calling me stupid? I didn't call you stupid. I said what you did was stupid. So it's the same thing, folks. If you're constantly criticizing, right, and diminishing your partner by talking about what they do, in essence, you're calling them that thing. And so you want to be mindful of that if you have anything negative to say, be careful about how you articulate it, because it shouldn't be for the benefit of tearing them down, but for the benefit of building them up, okay? Or how about this? Maybe you're not really a verbal assassin. Maybe you don't really pop off at the mouth, but every time your spouse does something that doesn't align with your value system, or you have an issue or a problem with their approach or methodology or their way, this is what you do. See how you just cut your eye? You cut your eye, you hem your haw, you breathe hard, and you're communicating. See, everything that you do communicates. So even when I don't have words to form, to articulate, I'm demonstrating my frustration. I'm demonstrating my contempt and my disgust. And that's all it takes. That is a non-verbal form of communication that sends a very powerful message to your partner that you are not pleased, that you are not happy, that you are dissatisfied, that you are frustrated, that you're angry, and that is the way in which you do it. And sometimes that can be more deadly, more punishing, more hurtful, more harmful than your words, because, man, you won't even form your list. They're asking you, what is it? Nothing. Right? And it's an attempt to make a point to your partner, but you're not giving them the clarity that they need, right? Another way that people really verbally abuse their spouse is that, they don't keep things in. Like what happens in our home stays in our home. No, they want to broadcast their disgust and their disdain before the entire world. And so these are people who purposely embarrass their spouse in public. So when we at a restaurant, I've got to make it known that I'm frustrated. So my voice goes up. Everybody, all the strangers at other tables, they're looking over at us, looking at this distraction. What's going on over there? And I've got to be the one to let the world know what I feel about you, right? Or maybe I go to social media. This is what we do all the time. Either we're directly exposing our spouse, or we ask these rhetorical questions or make these statements that give people an impression of what's really going on inside of our household. I see this done by couples all the time. A wife gets frustrated with her husband, she goes to social media and she'll post something and hashtag something that obviously is exposing what's going on in our household. Men do the same thing. And what it does is, you don't realize that you're doing it to release your frustration. You're doing it possibly to get people on your side, but you're exposing yourself. You're not just exposing your spouse and what your spouse did. You're not just exposing your relationship, but you're exposing you and your character and how you inappropriately deal with matters of the heart. And so you make yourself look bad when you expose your spouse, because if you truly understand that you are one and it is your job to cover and protect publicly from the rest of the world what's going on in your household, until you learn that lesson, it will continue to be a problem. Another thing, Another thing is really having vitriol for your partner and just letting them know you're weak. You're nothing. You're defective. You're worthless. You just like your daddy. You're just like your mother, right? And so these are very harsh words that attack. And when you engage in these type of things, it's almost like, I've taken the gloves off. I don't even care anymore. I'm going to say what I want. I'm going to do what I want. Whatever the consequences are, I'll deal with them, but you are going to know. And what happens is this begins to tear down the connection. And what happens is couples move further and further and further apart in their own space, because I don't feel comfortable up in here. I don't feel comfortable. I don't feel safe with you. I don't feel protected by you. And this is how the disconnect happens, and couples begin to drift into their own worlds. And so I want you to ask yourself the question, is that me? Is this what we have in our relationship? Is this how we show up? We're talking about verbal abuse. Verbal abuse. It's a real thing, folks. We're going to had a technical difficulty, folks. Sorry about that. Listen, we're talking about verbal abuse. We're going to come back and talk about a few more ways that you can be abusive in your relationship. So make sure you stay tuned for this quick commercial break. Be right back.
Welcome to the Couples Academy app. The Couples Academy app is your go-to hub for how to do marriage right. Get started with our app today by perusing our amazing features that conveniently allow you to connect. This app is packed with powerful content and resources to help you grow and stay connected. With this app, you can watch our messages, find marriage resources, watch, listen, and read the real-life stories of restored couples, sign up for events, read articles and blog posts, stay up to date with push notifications, share your favorite messages via Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, or email, and download messages for offline listening. For more information about the Couples Academy app, go to couplesacademy.org.
Hey guys, we're back. We're talking about recognizing abusive behavior in your marriage. Maybe you can resonate. Maybe you can identify with this. If this is you, we want to know who you are. If this is you, we want you to reach out for help. You don't have to deal with this. You don't have to suffer through this. We are here to aid you any way that we can. But let's continue. We're talking about verbal abuse, but there are other types of abuse. There is something that we would call threatening behavior, okay? Threatening behavior are things that you don't necessarily do, but you give the impression or you give the threat that you will do it. And it's a form of control and manipulation, because what you're trying to do is, force your spouse to do what they won't willingly do. Because you won't voluntarily do it, I'm going to force this behavior out of you. And so you see situations like a person who says that they will leave, right? This is how we see this all the time. People who threaten divorce, the big D word, or maybe they're in a long-term non-married relationship, but they're always threatening to leave. I'm going to pack my bags and I'm going to leave. If you don't change, I'm out of here, right? And so because their partner has a fear of abandonment, a fear of rejection, they don't want the relationship to end. They will do anything to comply. Fine. No problem. I'll do what you want. Right? And that's how it happens. And what happens is they're in panic mode. They're emotional. They think their spouse, it's going to call it quits, that this is the last time. And because I want this relationship for dear life, I will do anything to hold on to it. I will let you control my behavior. I will let you make my decisions. I will let you tell me what you want me to do. Just don't leave me. And if the person who's constantly using threatening behaviors realizes, because there's patterns, right? We all have a relational pattern that we've identified. So I know if I threaten, I know I'm going to get what I want. So I'm going to threaten to leave. Maybe I'm not leaving. I'm not going anywhere. But guess what? One more time. I dare you, right? So now I'm threatening to punch you. I'm threatening to kick you. I'm threatening to slap you. I will pick up something and I'll intentionally throw it near you, not trying to hit you, but throw it near you to send a message that if you get out of line, I'm going to, right? We do that in relationships to the people that we claim that we love. And so now we have people under our thumb. We have people who are in fear. And so they're very careful how they move, very careful what they say, for fear that either A, he may leave, or B, he may harm me. And if not me, he will harm my children. I'm going to take these kids. I'm going to take them. And we're going to go. Like, these are the threats. There's nothing healthy about this. It is abusive behavior. And many of us think that it's no big deal. I just said something in my frustration and I didn't really mean it. But when you do it, you know that it works. And so once again, it's a tool of manipulation and control, threatening to, especially when you do it in public, right? It's almost like you're going to make insinuations and you're going to let other people know. You're going to look at them that particular way. You're going to make it clear that if they don't fix it and change right now, boy, oh boy. And now other people are aware of what you're willing to do. And so what happens is the one that you're abusing, what they're trying to do is protect you. So they fall in line. They keep their mouth shut. They do whatever you request because they don't want the world to see how crazy you are. Isn't that crazy? How the victim oftentimes protects the person who's operating as the villain. We see this all the time in relationships. But in addition to threatening behavior, there is the physical abuse that people engage in. Now, this is very common, very, very common. Now, once again, abuse is a loaded term. It's a term that people do not like to acknowledge. It's just like addiction. I don't have an addiction. I'm not an abuser. Like, nobody wants to claim these terms. So fine, I'm not putting the label or the title on you. I'm just saying some of the things that you may do are reminiscent of someone who is an abuser. So maybe you're not an abuser, but you have abusing tendencies. You have abusing behavior. And so we know all the time that there are some couples that once they get into an argument, all of a sudden they're ready to throw hands. I mean, literally. And they fight each other like strangers in the street sometimes. And they will punch and they will slap and they will choke. I'm not going to punch you, but I'm going to choke you, right? They will kick. I see it. I can't tell you. Well, I won't even go there. I won't tell you about the time I had to break up a fight in the middle of an intensive because their knee-jerk reaction was to go for blows. And that's how they dealt with normal situations. Unhealthy. Very unhealthy. Okay, so physically making the partner do something against their will, that's another form of abuse, right? And if they don't do it, there will be punishment that they will have to suffer as a result of not being obedient to their partner. But even outside of kicking and punching and swearing, like just manhandling or woman handling, because it's not just men. Let's just be clear that a lot of domestic violence situations, to be honest, are initiated by women. They are. And so it's not, I don't want you to think that the face of an abuser is a male who's strong and dominant and overpowering his woman. There are many women who are very abusive as well. And if it's not with that tongue, it's with these hands. And so whether it's pushing or grabbing or restraining their partner and getting them to do what they want them to do, this is all toxic behavior that does not help. Another type of abuse. So we talked about verbal abuse, we talked about threatening behavior, and then we begin to move into physical abuse. But there's another one, and it's sexual abuse, right? Now, sex, we know, is one of the biggest challenges and struggles that a lot of couples have in their relationship. There's a sexual disconnection, and it creates problems. And so when one partner is pushing the other person to have sex, okay, when they may be afraid to do so, when one person has an aversion to sex because of unresolved emotional or relational issues in the relationship, and so they're shut down in that area, and so the other one is constantly demanding and putting pressure on their spouse and forcing their way sexually with their partner, that is a problem. That is a problem. Now, obviously, I know that in a marriage, sex is a gift. It is something that both partners should willingly enjoy and offer each other. You two have become one. But when there are problems, when there are issues, when there are traumas that have not been addressed and resolved, it will show up in the area of sexuality, and oftentimes it will impact that marriage in a horrific way. And so, listen, we've known many men who have raped their wives. And as crazy and as weird as this sounds to some of you, there are some women who will literally rape their husbands. Well, how is that done? Yeah, it's done, folks. It is done. And what happens is, you know, sex is a gift from God, and it's supposed to be this uniquely wonderful experience, but it can be used as a form of control and manipulation and punishment. There's all types of things that are happening in the world today. And sex is one of the things that, if not handled properly, can be very abusive in a relationship. And so if you find yourself in any of these situations, you want to reach out for help, just go to the website, couplesacademy.org, set up a discovery call so we can assist you in your situation. Debbie says, great topic. So many people might not realize that they are like this because of the environment they grew up in. And that's exactly the fact. If you grew up in an abusive home, and that's all that you knew, maybe you never classified it as abuse. It was just normal. This is what was done. And you play out in your adulthood what you experienced in your home, and here we are in this situation. Then we have another comment. It usually feels like I'm living a long divorce, but he'll never agree to one. And I don't know if God will approve a divorce. Well, this is why you need to reach out to us for help. Because who wants to be in a marriage where they feel like it's a divorce? There's nothing but a separation. We're at odds. We're not doing well. Like, so many people are committed to the marriage, but they're not committed to having a healthy relationship within that marriage. And so as a result, there are consequences. Another comment, my spouse never looked at himself as an abuser. He blamed his actions on me. So glad to be divorced after 20 years of that. Yeah, you know what? Some people really, really, really are not aware of their behaviors. And sometimes it takes leaving a relationship for a person to have an epiphany and an aha moment that, man, maybe my actions were abusive. Hopefully they've learned that lesson, because if they haven't, they'll enter into another relationship with the same tendencies and the same mindset and the same behaviors, and may wind up in the same situation. Jay says, what about verbal abuse? If you go to the beginning of the episode, that's exactly what we started with. And so I encourage you to do so. But listen, guys, hope today's conversation gave you some thoughts to think about. Hopefully it will help you to engage in a conversation with your spouse about what a healthy relationship should look like, identifying where you two have fallen off and how you need to get back on track. Listen, you're watching the Couples Academy show. Hope you got something out of it today. See you tomorrow for another episode. Take care.